What's up, everybody? You know what day it is. It's time for your next dose of Warrior Wednesday with your host, that Wounded Warrior guy. That's me. And today we are going to be discussing PTSD. It's June. June is PTSD Awareness Month. So I'm going to go over my experiences with PTSD, the pros and cons of different types of therapists, and also the different therapy options that could be available to you and could be beneficial if you are suffering from conditions that are associated with PTSD. But before we get into this video, I want to remind you guys, if you are enjoying this content, make sure to throw me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, share this video, do one of those things for me, guys, and I'd really appreciate it. Well, without further ado, let's hop right into it. So, I do have um, a minor, um, well, I have been diagnosed with minor PTSD and PTSD residuals because of my accident that I suffered whenever I was deployed over to Afghanistan. Even though they are minor, they do affect me on a daily basis. They restrict my ability to socialize, my ability to be comfortable outside of the apartment. So I guess we'll start with when I realized that I needed to seek professional help. When I was starting to see warning signs that I could potentially be a victim of PTSD. So, it was probably about 6 weeks to 2 months after my initial injury that I started to realize it. It was whenever I started to leave the hospital and I started to kind of venture out beyond the hospital, and leaving the hospital when you're in intensive care for so long, you really just you don't really want to like dip your toe into anything. You've been put in a hospital bed for weeks on end. All you've seen is doctors. You've only been interacting with medical personnel. So, one of the first things that I wanted to do is I wanted to get out. I wanted to go to the mall. I wanted to see a movie. I wanted to get some good food. Just thinking to myself that I was going to be able to kind of just jump back into all those things, just no problem. Well, um, my family come to visit me and they all took me out to the mall. We spent a day at the mall. And I just remember, I think I was in a shoe store because I think my mom was going to buy me a new pair of shoes while she was up at the hospital visiting me. I was in a shoe store. I was looking at a pair of shoes. I think that they were Crocs, actually, which is I own pairs of Crocs. It is what it is. I'm not one of those people that are accessorizing like the stuff I've seen on my Facebook feed. But anyway, so I think I was shopping for a pair of Crocs, and I was looking at a pair of shoes. I turned around and I'm in an aisle of shoes, and there's like people blocking the aisle on both ends. And I remember I felt just so confined, restricted. Um, I my heart was beating out of my chest. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I was terrified. Um, kind of shut down, couldn't really talk to anybody, wasn't able to make eye contact. I put the shoes back and just kind of like just stood there until I thought that I could leave um, that aisle of shoes. And I ended up sitting there for a little while. Basically, I mean, I have had a panic attack before. It was not quite that intense, but anybody who's had a panic attack, it was kind of like the intensity leading up to that. You always have like super levels of anxiety, shortness of breath, that type of thing, but without the actual panic attack. So that's what I experienced. I ended up being able to get back to my family, get back to my parents. I was able to calm down. Um, and yeah, I mean, we went on with our day. And then after that, I started to get into different types of therapies. and I spoke up about it. And we had to do. So I was with a therapist who would go out with me to like get groceries and stuff like that. We would do outings, and slowly I was able to be confident enough to go do those things. And I learned some techniques that would allow me to still be able to operate as an individual living by myself, um, without other accommodations from the hospital. So I'd be able to go get my groceries. If I wanted to go shopping, I could go shopping. But I just remember, like, through that process, and still, anytime I go anywhere, there are instances whenever I have high levels of anxiety. I get really nervous. I get choked up, and I mean, sometimes I just need to separate myself, go sit down somewhere, calm down, and then I can keep going. But so basically, those initial things are what led me to realize that you know I had some issues that were not visible, and I needed to seek help. And I ended up being diagnosed with minor levels of PTSD and PTSD residuals of antisocial behavior. So that's whenever I realized it. Um, Pros and cons of different types of therapists. I've had both military psychologists and non or civilian psychologists. Um, I would say that there's pros and cons to both. Starting with a psychologist or psychiatrist who is either in the military, or has retired from the military, has a military background. Those individuals are going to be able to relate to specific events, and you're going to be able to have more of a um, relatable dialogue with those individuals. However, from my personal experience, and this is probably different for everybody, but military, so psychologists with a military background tend to, in my opinion, come off as being more judgmental, just because of the stigma. Sorry about that, guys. Just because of the stigma associated with PTSD. Um, I think that I have definitely had some pretty harsh judgment and just kind of been looked at as, oh, well, that's not a big deal. Whenever I was talking to a psychologist, I was talking to a male psychologist who was, I think he was a colonel in the military at the time. And this is whenever I was still at this is whenever I was at Hunter Holmes McGuire. I was in the STAR program. This was the individual that was there who was our go-to psychologist. And he was in the military. I think he was actually a retired colonel, but he was in the military. And it was very kind of, oh, well, that's normal type of response that I got from him. But I was able to have relatable conversations with him that I do believe was beneficial in my overall treatment. However, as soon as I was able to, when I got back to Walter Reed, I did end up getting a different therapist as opposed to doing like telehealth or Zoom meetings with the same guy. So I did switch to a different therapist just because I needed somebody that was going to be more open and more understanding and less obviously judgmental. Um, so now I am seeing a civilian psychologist for my therapy now. And even though he doesn't really understand a lot about the military or a lot about how things kind of operate, why we do the things that we do, why the process is the way that it is, why the restrictions are there, why the stigma exists. He is very understanding. And anytime I say something or attempt to be vulnerable, he allows me to do that. without coming off as being like, oh, well, that's just weakness, or that's just, you being whatever. So I do appreciate that. However, I do think that there is uh, something of value if you are more comfortable speaking to military personnel, military counselors, psychologists that have a military background. Then there's no reason why you shouldn't do that. I think that there are a lot of benefits that can be had, and I do not believe that every single military psychologist or psychiatrist out there is going to judge you. Could have just been a bad experience on my part, but that's the experience I had, so that's what I'm sharing. Um, as far as like different types of therapy, I think there's individual, once every 2 week, once every week type therapy, just sit and talk type therapy. How is your week? How are you doing? Fill out this questionnaire so we can determine your progress over a 6 month time frame type thing. That is great. Sometimes people just need to sit down and express themselves and talk openly, hear their thoughts out loud, and get it out, talk about it, try to determine what the next step is to dealing with those issues. The therapy that I just finished was an intensive cognition therapy. So, trying to determine what I'm feeling, when I'm feeling those things, the thoughts that I'm telling myself, and try to come up with alternate thoughts for those things. So it's a much more complex type of therapy, right? You're going to have your homework, you're going to have to sit down and write out your thoughts, and it's good because it allows you to really understand what's going on. You can have all these things that you're dealing with and still not be able to articulate what's going on. All you know is, I remember myself being one way, and now I'm not that way. What changed? That type of therapy can help you determine what the actual issues are, write them down, and then over a process or a period of time, you analyze what those issues are, you break them down, and you kind of restructure the thoughts behind those feelings to allow yourself to view things in a different way, to prevent yourself from having those negative thoughts keep you from moving forward, right? So it's kind of like you're taking all these bad things you're telling yourself and you're reprogramming it to be more of a positive way to look at it over a long period of time, right? So mine was a 12-week process. We went through all these questions. We had a first session, 2 sessions, came up with all these stuck points or negative thoughts, wrote them down, spent the next 10 weeks analyzing them and really trying to create alternative thoughts that are more positive, more progressive, that allows you to heal as an individual. So that's another type of therapy. The last type of therapy I'm going to talk about with you guys is group therapy. I have done some group therapy for my traumatic brain injury. I do feel like group therapy is very beneficial. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to start another group therapy program in August, which I'm really excited about. It deals with general, it's general adaptations. So things that we can do to help alleviate our stressors when we're dealing with situations that causes anxiety. And the reason why it's a general program is because it deals with things that are not directly PTSD or military related. There is a PTSD, just pure PTSD program that gives you those stress reducing techniques. And, for those of you guys and gals out there who, may be suffering from PTSD, it might be something to contact your psychologist or psychiatrist about and ask about, inquire for. Because, it's out there. The reason why I chose to do the general group is because I have things in my life that may not be military related that causes stress and anxiety. Now, it might stem from my injuries that I sustained while in the military. However, because I'm not in the military now, and I have these moments of high anxiety, these moments of being afraid, being fearful, being terrified in non-military situations, I will be in a room with both civilians and ex-military, and that way I can get more of a general kind of feedback from everybody. Like, okay, so you, somebody who's never been in the military, father of three, going through these things, what can you tell me about this? You, staff sergeant still in the military, dealing with these things, what can you tell me about this? And then I can determine how I approach my situations and how I use those coping skills and those techniques to navigate my stressors in life, if that makes sense. So I'm really excited about that. Um, I mean, it's the next logical step. I do think I'm ready for it. Uh, and I mean, this channel's not going anywhere. I will keep you guys informed as to my progress whenever that does start. So y'all can look forward to that. But I just wanted to do this video today just to bring some light to a otherwise invisible issue that does have a lot of stigma behind it. PTSD is real. It affects thousands and thousands of people, and it's something that needs to be talked about. It's something that needs to be acknowledged. And if you are suffering from it, you should not be so afraid of that stigma that you do not seek help yourself. These programs are out there. I'm going through these programs and I am seeing the improvements. I am seeing the progress. So it works. So it just requires you to take that first step. And, like, you can do that. You can take that first step. You can advocate for yourself. You can say, hey, I have a problem. It's okay to have a problem. I need help. The help will be there if you ask for it. So, so June is PTSD Awareness Month. So I just wanted to do this video, put some information out there for you guys. If y'all have any questions, you can, as always, feel free to reach out to me. I usually put my private email associated with the channel in the description of all these videos. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm always checking my email. I'm pretty good about responding to people, so just reach out to me. We'll talk. And if you have any questions for me, I will either I'll give you the answer, and if I don't know it, I will go out and I will get you an answer. But guys, that's all I got for you. So before I get off here, just remember, even if you don't realize it, even if you don't believe it, there's a warrior in every single one of you. I see it. Take care, guys.